everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Bits and Shits. It's a new feature from the Brazen Broadcast crew, in which Reaver and I get together and we talk about all of the cool kits that you can use to get bits, to make your conversions, and to create your Chaos Dwarf modeling projects and armies. And I'm sure you know Reaver from the podcast previously. But you might not know that he has the most successful blog of all time on CDO, and a big part of that is his conversion work. And I think it's fair to say, Reva, that it's always been a conversation between you and me about where to scavenge weird bits and weird kit bashes, right?
Absolutely. And for those who don't know, Chitz has been assembling one of the largest collections we have yet to see in its entirety on Chaos Dwarfs Online. Certainly coming up, you'll be looking forward to seeing 40k conversions in service of Hashut. So there will be a lot of cross-play across ranges and a whole lot of different kits that may not be traditionally considered a purchase for a Chaos Dwarf collector. So hopefully we can provide some insight and a little bit of fun along the way, I suppose.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a polite way of saying that I've bought a lot of plastic that I don't need. But the story of those horns of Hatchet's Brews is one for another day. Um, The point is, I ended up with 100 of them in my house, and I had to do something with them. So we're going to be covering all sorts of weird stuff, and we have a thread on the forum for you guys to suggest topics for us as well. But we're going to keep it short and sweet and get down to business. And generally, what we're going to do is just one of us is going to run down a list of kits that we think we want to recommend, and why we recommend them, how we think they could be useful. And that's taking quite a big view of Chaos Dwarfs, right? Like, this isn't just about how to make Infernal Guard when GW don't sell Infernal Guard. This is about all sorts of areas of the range, and especially finding utility pieces in places where you weren't necessarily expecting them. And I think we're going to start with a very special topic that I know is very dear to your heart, Jared, and that's shovels. Do you want to give us an overview of why you are so passionate about shovels as bits, and how you use them in your conversions?
That's a fair question. I don't know if there's a specific origin story for the passion for shovels, but something that I've always done at least since I started painting up a full Chaos Dwarf army was troop filler. And early on, I came into some Battle for Skull Pass leftover bits and had a bunch of 40k bits. And I always found like the wheelbarrows, shovels, and those kinds of like fun scenery bits can tell a fun story in a diorama on a filler base. So that's probably as good an excuse I can come up with for this entire episode to exist. But a little bit more backstory. We kind of memed this bits and shits into existence purely on an excuse to rank the best shovels GW has made. So that's why we're all here, and hopefully this will be the first in many pointless episodes.
Yeah, Reaver and I, we do have the thread for you guys to suggest stuff, but there's also quite a lot of verbal script posting that both inspired and will take place during this. I do think it's, and I know you're going to talk about the Skullcracker later, but I do think that shovels have a special role in a Chaos Dwarf modeling project because Chaos Dwarfs' labor is such an important part of what they do, and slavery is such an important physical task for to be taking place in your army. You've got coal-fed things, you've got magma-fed things, you've got lots of reasons for a model to be doing manual labor on the battlefield. And from that perspective, I think knowing where to find a good shovel to put in the hand of an oppressed-looking greenskin is definitely a positive thing. But there's lots of shovels past and shovels future. Where do you want to start, Reva?
Well, I think we'll start with the obvious. Probably one of the most iconic models for an entire era of Chaos Dwarfs and Chaos Dwarfs Online, the Hell Cannon Shoveler. So this came into being in kind of a lull, so to speak, in Chaos Dwarfs, but represented what inspired plenty of Battle for Skull Pass conversions into an aesthetic of the Hellcannon Shoveler. He's got a very, I think it looks very nautiloid, the helm, but that's me kind of justifying in post using it all over the place. But we've seen plenty of people using this model for different kit bashes, blue stuff molds, and anything and everything. This model's all over the forum, and the shovel itself's got a fun skull in it, which and a spike on the other end, so it can be used for militant purposes as well. So I think it's a fun model. We see it all over the place.
It's a classic, and I think it spices up any piece of siege equipment you have. And it also, like, I wouldn't want to go up against that guy in an infantry battle, right? Because his skull's got sharp edges. Sorry, his shovel has got sharp edges. Skull is adorable, but the studded metal as well. You can tell that, like, he's been shoveling for a long time, and he spent some serious money on a blinged out shovel because he's like, listen, I'm going to use this thing every day. Um, and you're right. Like, I think it's such a utility piece. If you want to get your hands on one, obviously you can look at the secondary market, but the Hell Cannon kit should be coming back, I think, as part of the old world. And from that perspective, you may very well find the shoveler comes back along with it.
Yeah, certainly there was an era that transitioned to Finecast, and so hopefully, I know a lot of people have had the metal versions, and I've got one myself. It's quite a brick on the tabletop, that's for sure. That whole model, but definitely advise picking it up, even if just for the crew. And there's plenty of people who've done conversions using the Hell Cannon itself. If you already have one, plenty of inspiration out there in our War Machines image gallery for different uses for the Hell Cannon.
Well, that is a classic. Lead on.
All right, we'll move on. Another obvious one. Kind of a two in one here, but we've got two different Chaos Dwarfs Wiz shovels in the Iron Demon and the Skullcracker kit. I'd say the Iron Demon is probably more popular just based on availability. He's in a bit more of a laboring pose, shoveling coal into the furnace of the Demon Engine. Whereas the Skullcracker one is got the shovel on his shoulder. He's got a bit more of a square shovel than a traditional spade. But I think both of them are like fantastic Chaos Dwarf models. I'd still put the Hellcannon shovel over them in terms of being iconic. But I don't have the Skullcracker myself, but I've used the Iron Demon Shoveler a couple times, including cross-swapping between the Hellcannon and the Iron Demon. So it's a fun model. Pretty classic Legion of Asgore range.
Yeah, I think there's a reason the Skullcracker is less popular, and I think the reason for that is that the kit is an absolute bitch in resin. I think if it could be given to people in plastic, they'd think more positively about it. But the odds that you get a key component really badly bent out of shape or mold slipped, even in Ford World resin, not that there are any other kinds on the market, obviously, but those are even less reliable if there are. I think it's a shame because a lot of people don't attempt a proper Skullcracker, and as a result, they never get the relaxed horned dwarf with his shovel slung over his shoulder. Um, Again, a shovel that really looks like it would hurt if it hit you in the head, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's rare to find a picture of a Skullcracker that doesn't look warped, even in official product images. It's the
It's
bear.
tough. It's really tough.
Moving on, another old one. We'll go with the Battle for Skull Pass loose shovel, loosely associated with the miners, I would say. It's almost a bit of a scenery piece, which kind of plays into troop filler, a fun base you could use in a unit if you're having trouble ranking up your cyborg miniatures, for example. There's definitely plenty of uses for fun little filler stands. Shovel's kind of stuck in the ground. It's got a little sign and a dwarf helmet on it. Just a fun little utility piece. Certainly, you could put it in a pile on a War Machine base if you put your crew like integral to the War Machine's base to fill up some space. Uh, yeah, it's a pretty simple piece, but from a fun era that a lot of Chaos Dwarf fans are familiar with.
They were two to a sprue as well, right? So um, Battle for Skull Pass is a weird one. Sometimes it's cheap and really cheap because there were so many made and they didn't sell very well. Other times people are like, oh, this is old. I should charge £80 for one sprue. And so it can be really annoying. Um, but my strong advice is to wait until you find it going for cheap because people who know, how many of these were made will be respectful of the fact they're not worth very much. And then you get two little cute little fellas that can show up all over your army.
All right. Next one, kind of moving into some more niche picks. We might not quite get to 10 shovels here, but for number 4, we've got the Imperial Guard tank sprue. There's a um, couple different pieces on that. There's a pickaxe and a shovel, both on the same upgrade sprue. It's a sprue that has a pintle-mounted turret, some of the other winches, and various tank upgrades like the plow. That's where you'd find it. Surprisingly, it's still sold on Games Workshop, which I wasn't expecting. That sprue's probably come in tanks for at least a couple decades at this point, something around that.
Is it cheap? I mean, I guess, is it just bundled with tanks or can you buy it separately?
Honestly, I think the better play would probably be to find a tank it comes with
Yeah.
and just sell off the tank. But that's if you're willing to go that through that extra effort. Um, but that's certainly something I do all the time, just to get the spare pieces. But
Yeah, you can get the loose sprue for £10. That's crazy.
it's not bad. Yeah, could be worse. Maybe a little pricey for a shovel, but it's probably cheaper than a skullcracker. So yeah, not much else to say there.
No, legit, legit. Well, there are more shovels in the far future. Have we transitioned to sci-fi shovels now?
I think we're in there. Yeah. So moving on, we've got a couple more in the Imperial Guard Cadian heavy weapons. Not an expert, but there's a serrated shovel, a shovel that's in a backpack, which may appear in a future episode of Top 10 Backpacks. Yeah, again, fun little sprue with some extra scenery pieces, and you can honestly, even just like knives, to a certain extent, the water skins. There's plenty of other things in Imperial Guard bits that you can use. But yeah, certainly the fun serrated shovel's a good look.
And they work really well. Let's say you've got a closed fist, right? You've got a dwarf or a hobgoblin or a human slave or, whoever with a closed fist or with a weapon in a closed fist. If you just snip the top and bottom off and then cut your shovel in half, you can put the shovel in that hand really easily, especially if you're using plastic glue, right? And before you know it, you can turn any model, no matter how weirdly posed they are. As long as they've got something in a closed fist, they could be carrying a shovel. And from that perspective, the world's your oyster.
Oh, completely. Yeah, and there's certainly plenty that shouldn't be overlooked in many 40K Imperial Guard lines, especially. Um, you can multi-base things to a certain extent and use like things like backpacks to kind of fill out some of your infantry. Then you can make some fun dioramas. I think when I think Xander actually sent some models around for the emissary exchange. Use kind of that tactic to multi-base some Battle for Skull Pass dwarfs, give them a bit more bulk, and kind of fill out to get up to 24 in a unit. So plenty of fun sandbags and other items that you might find in those Imperial Guard sprues as well as useful. But a backpack's a backpack, and if you're fine with shaving off the Imperial Eagle, you'll probably find quite a few useful bits in the range. Moving on, bit back to the now definitely AOS Skaven line. We have the Plague Claw Catapult. Comes with a fun rat with gas mask who is shoveling some goo into the catapult claw. Just a fun model. He's very Skaven. I think you could certainly find some uses for it. I'm maybe a bit of a heretical user of Skaven bits across Chaos Dwarf armies, but he's just a fun shovel. He couldn't be neglected.
They may not be the most reliable slaves.
You could probably argue that he's equipped with more of a spoon, but we'll overlook that for now.
It makes the perfect, especially with the gas mask, the perfect companion to an ass cannon conversion, doesn't it?
Yep, and you'd get the goo pile, as a bundled deal if you had the play claw catapult. So
Snip it off, you put it underneath, drippings. Alternatively, it could be the lube. There's so many different ass cannon options.
You are a degenerate.
Really, that little man. If I was going to ask for Michael to do one update to his horrendous ass cannon, it would definitely be to add that Skaven, 100%.
yep, that would be
So,
pristine.
was the Plague Claw catapult on the list of things getting discontinued from or replaced by something new, or is it staying in the range?
I believe that's staying in the range, but that may not stand the test of time. But for now, at least, that's of the newer release of Skaven, at least among those old lines that came out as the plastic multi kit with the warp lightning cannon. Interesting.
Yeah, it's not on the list of things being discontinued, so I'm pretty sure you're safe. That's great, even better. Future for goo shovelers everywhere.
And worth noting, there's a fun, also gas mask Skaven pushing a little lever, which is a great little fun bit that could be used in a war machine conversion as well. Always need people levering.
Often more than we need other things, given the prevalence of stone throwers nowadays. But yeah, you're right. I do think, especially thematically speaking, people don't tend to use Skaven as slaves. But first of all, you should feel completely legitimate in doing so. And Skaven will be cheaper than ever thanks to AOS 4. But secondly, Skaven working your artillery makes sense from a lore perspective because they're some of the only people used to working with artillery as nasty as the artillery that Chaos Dwarfs use. So you could very easily have Skaven weapons crews working under the lash of a Chaos Dwarf and be quite pleased with the aesthetic that you get as a result.
Yep, completely agree. Yep. All right. Moving on back to 40K, we have the new Krieg kits, which I found out aren't called Krieg on the web store, but either way, in the new Kill Team box, got some veteran Imperial Guardsmen, um, gas masks, all the whole 9 yards, but they have some of the typical array of Krieg accessories on the sprues. There is another fun little shovel stabbed into the dirt, and actually a couple other loose shovels, likely for strapping to somebody's back. So you get a good 3-for-1 deal there on one sprue. Can't pass that up.
I think they are the meme. A lot of people will have heard shovel and thought Krieg, but at the same time, ultimately that is the beauty of Kill Team. The only issue is that if you're not a 40k person, then you've now got a bunch of Krieg missing their most iconic item. Um, but on the other hand, I do think that they offer that kind of entrenching tool aesthetic that's particularly kind of grimy in World War I, and I think it fits well with Chaos Dwarfs if you want it to.
That brings us to an honorable wrenching. Can't quite take credit for that, but the New Moon to Ogren's Servitors, which don't actually have a shovel, but they have some fun wrenches. So keep an eye out in Necromunda kits is really the shout out here. There's plenty of good bits in those that can have kind of a variety of tech levels. So worth taking a look in there for crew bits for Chaos Dwarfs.
Yeah, there's definitely stuff like corpse grinders and Goliaths. Like if you just make sure they don't have guns, um, then there's lots of Marauder, Chaos Marauder aesthetic in there that could very easily end up as a human slave. It'll take you a little bit of work, but that's what this podcast is all about. Let's face it. You're into doing a little bit of work, so from that perspective, the challenge should be quite fun. Yeah, those. Um, did we talk about the Rajikar the Beast Warcry Warband shovel? You know, the undead fella.
We have not. There's, uh, I think it was first in Cursed City. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's a bit of an interesting case. He's got a spade-shaped item, and ostensibly he could be a gravedigger kind of personality, but it's not explicitly a shovel. But it could very well look like a shovel convincingly enough in a Chaos Dwarf army. It's very menacing looking. If you were to dual purpose that as a weapon in a Chaos Dwarf unit, I think it would work well.
And he's very emaciated as well, which helps for a slave. If you just do a head swap on his slightly weird head, and the zombie on the ground. But one thing I wanted to mention about that, so that shovel is the same, for no good reason, in my opinion, as the shovel on the Horns of Hashut fella, who also has a shovel. I'm just gonna message that to you now because I just realised it while we were talking. Right, look at
that is
the
eerily
fella on the
similar.
left.
Yep.
It's slightly more horn shaped, right? Because they wanted it to look a bit like their Rune of Hashut. But that exact same shovel reoccurs. It's not very easy to work with on that model, but that model already looks like a slave. The only problem is he's not holding the shovel as if to do any shoveling. He's holding it like it's a weapon because that's how it's supposed to look. But in theory, you could fit him into an artillery crew pretty easily as well. The only problem is he'd then be stuck with having a whole Horns of Hashut warband, but that's a story for another day.
And all you get out of it's that one other dude with a hoe. Worthless.
Yeah, I had to do some strange posing, and I didn't even necessarily nail it when I was replacing. I think with the hoe, I think that's a chick first of all, but secondly, like imagine trying to hand swap that thing for a gun and a melee weapon. It didn't look good.
Pass. Speaking of passing, we'll have a future episode of the top 5 Warcry warbands and why they're not Horns of Hashut. So stay tuned for that.
Is that about it for shovels?
I think that covers it.
Wow.
Anybody who has any other fun shovels, especially shovels from earlier eras of Games Workshop, feel free to share them in the thread on the discourse associated with this or in any of the comments associated. Be happy to see some other fun things and have some of that information spread around the forum, which is kind of why we're here.
Yeah, especially I think artillery crew is such a fun little motif that doesn't have to take you very long, and every artillery piece needs its crew. But not all of them need to be big, strong ogres, right? Some of them can just be little ratty fellas getting the work done. And so I think this is really about making those characters stand out. But anyone in a Chaos Dwarf army has the right to hold a shovel because someone's going to have to do a lot of digging at some point, whether it's trenches, ditches, earthworks, graves, or whatever. No one is immune from manual labor in the Chaos Dwarf community.
Absolutely correct. I think we're good to leave it on that, huh?
All right. Well, in that case, thank you very much for joining us for the inaugural episode of Bitz and Chitz. We hope this was helpful in your conversion and kit bashing journeys. And we'll be back with a new one very, very soon. We'll catch you later. Bye, guys.